Well, thank you for joining me today for the broadcast. I'm going to continue with our series on marriage, and I'm going to pick it up again with conflicts because this is an area that we find that many couples really struggle with. And when they're dealing with disagreements and conflicts in their marriage, with having different perspective, different vantage points, different viewpoints because of perhaps where they've been raised or other factors that would enter in. So I'm going to do just a little bit of review from the previous our previous broadcast and pick it up there, and then I'm going to go also into really not only understanding the conflicts, but also how to disarm those and to actually use them as stepping stones to create growth opportunities. So if you're enjoying this, I'd love for you to let me know and subscribe to the channel, or just even send me a note or whatever. I'd just love to hear from you because I'm sitting here talking to a camera, and I'd love to hear some feedback on the other side of that camera. So if you feel to do so, let me know how are you enjoying these. But anyway, I want to get back into just like I said, do a little bit of review, and that is going to go forward. But conflicts are a normal and necessary part of healthy relationships, including marriage. In fact, in reality, two people can't be expected to agree on everything. I mean, my wife and I, Marty and I have been married for over 58 years, and we still don't agree on everything, but we have learned how to disagree and stay agreeable and respectful and honoring and being creating a space in which we can disagree and then come to resolution later on. So I'm going to go forward, but I see a conflict really is more than just a disagreement. Disagreements can be a disagreement, but if they're not resolved, they can become conflicts, because what a conflict does ultimately is it puts us on opposite sides of something, and we each have a position that we're determined to protect. So I want to just go on from there, because like I said, it does not just a disagreement does not have to become a conflict, because a disagreement becomes a conflict also when we perceive a threat of some kind. Now, that threat might not be physical. It might be emotional. It might be, well, I just am not going to be valued. I'm going to be put down. I'm going to feel ashamed for even having my point of view, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one of the reasons that can cause a disagreement to escalate into a conflict. So we really need to we need to try to resolve disagreements and not allow them to just continue to fester and fester, and as a result of that, become a conflict. So we often respond to conflicts based on our perceptions of the situation. Remember that our perception becomes our reality, or even if that perception is wrong. What it does then is it creates a false reality. And we have actually a lot of that on a larger scale today. The news media is trying to create a perception in the public of fear, and there's nothing to fear. And so, there are some threats that out there are real, but it's not something we should be living in fear with. But if that becomes your perception, it also becomes your reality. And so that's why people have all kinds of responses to that. But if we respond, like I said, we normally respond to a conflict based on our perception of the situation. Now, what has to happen if we're going to really resolve that conflict is our perception of what we're discussing or the disagreeing needs to change to where we actually can both come on the same page, whether you and your spouse can come on the same page to where you can see the issue from perhaps a different perspective, but at the same time, recognizing it's the same issue. If I were to take a 25-cent piece and show it up to you, one side would have a head on that, and I would say this coin has a head. There's an image of a head on it. If I turn it around, there's no head on that side. So you could say, I don't see a head on that image, or image of a head on that coin. I said, well, I see an image of a head on the coin. We're both right. It's just a matter of our perspective and how we're looking at the circumstance. So we often develop a style of handling conflicts at an early age. This is often as a result of watching how our parents have disagreements and how they had conflicts and how they resolved this. Maybe it was just through a bunch of fighting, a bunch of hollering at each other. Maybe it was whatever. But often that is what that is how we learn to actually attempt to at least resolve conflicts. The other thing is that I think it's really important that couples, especially where you have children, that you model to your children how you can resolve the conflicts, because it'll help train them into their adult lives that conflicts are not something that means the end of something or end of a relationship, but that actually it can become a point where we can build a relationship. At one time, I know there was a philosophy going around. I might have even espoused it myself to a degree, that parents should not argue in front of the children. Should not have difference of opinion in front of the children. I have since thrown that philosophy away, because if we as parents do not resolve conflicts in front of our children and never model how we are to do that, they will grow up as adults and never have an understanding or never have modeled for them how conflicts or disagreements are supposed to be resolved. And so consequently, they go into life as an adult unprepared for any kind of a difference of opinion or difference of perspective. And as soon as they encounter one, right away, they take that as a threat. But that's not the way it should be. If you and I as parents will model how we resolve conflicts, we'll do our children a lot of, give our children a lot of benefit and help prepare them for adulthood. So I want to continue going on with this there. So the real secret of a solid marriage is not the lack of conflicts, but how conflicts are resolved. And that's really what I want to get into today. I want to talk about how that conflicts can be resolved. And I want to say that disagreements, as I said earlier, disagreements are really a normal, natural part of a marriage. But if we'll deal with those and handle them with tact and sensibility, those conflicts can have the important function of strengthening our relationship. And that's where I'm going to focus on today. There are very, very few disagreements or conflicts within a marriage that can't be resolved if they're just we approach it as adults, and we approach it in such a way that we really want to see this resolved so we can continue being on the same page, that we can make peace through it all. And let me just, while I have that in mind, let me tell you the difference between a peacemaker and a peacekeeper, because there's a vast difference between the two. A peacekeeper attempts to keep the peace through compromise. A peacemaker makes peace through reconciliation. And you see, as Christians, as believers, we're not called to be peacekeepers. Some people want to keep the peace at any cost. They will totally put aside their own perspectives. They'll just acquiesce to the other person. They say, well, whatever you say, that's what I'll do. I'll submit myself to that. But what that does is it causes a festering aggravation inside. And whenever there's a difference of opinion comes up, or a difference of agreement, and anything comes up, immediately a wall starts coming up. That's not what we're called to do. We're called, whenever there's a disagreement or something where we see something in a different manner, we're called to resolve that conflict through reconciliation so that we can become a peacemaker. And that's what this is all about. That's why I'm doing this particular segment of the series, because it's so important for us to have this as we go through life. It's not just with our marriage relationship, but it's all of our interpersonal relationships that we have, social and otherwise. And so it's really important. So here's what we need to understand. The goal in resolving a conflict should not be to prove who's right or wrong, but that the conflict is resolved through a mutual love and respect. You see, if we have a foundation in our relationships of mutual love and respect, then we can disagree with things agreeably. And just because we have a disagreement or a difference of opinion about something, it does not need to blow up and become a conflict that causes a breach in our relationship or causes irreparable damage. Because what really can happen if we don't deal with a conflict, what can happen is it can cause pent-up frustrations, and this creates a powerful force of resentment within us. And as we let that fester and just put, as the old adage says, we just put things under the rug, after a while that rug is going to get a lump in it, and we'll be stumbling over it. And this is not what marriage is all about. We need to do the best we can to have have a resolution and any form of agreement or disagreement, I should say. Conflicts that are repetitive and spiral out of control offer no benefit for either spouse. Keeping the emotions that accompany the conflict in control is of utmost importance. So I'm going to say a little bit more about that a little later on, but it's very, very important that as adults, we learn to control our emotions. The scripture tells us that a person who cannot rule his own spirit is like a city that's broken down and without walls. You see, one of the things as adults that we're responsible for is that we're to control our own emotions. We're not to give somebody else control over our emotions. How many times have we heard people say, well, they make me mad, or they made me do that? No, no, no. The ultimate controller of your emotions needs to be you. Nobody can make you mad unless you choose to allow them to make you mad. And I've often said over the years, don't allow other people's problems to become your problem. I'm going to say that again. It's a good principle. Don't allow other people's problem to become your problem. In other words, nobody can make you mad unless you give them the authority and the power to make you mad. You should rule your own emotions. And when you can rule your own emotions, there are no conflicts that you can't deal with properly as adults, respectfully, with mutual care, especially in the marriage, love for each other, honoring each other, that's what it's really all about. So as we continue on now, I want to talk about understanding conflicts in a relationship. There's actually three areas that I want to point out here as we talk about this, because the conflicts will usually arise, or different opinions arise from having different values, motivations, perceptions, ideas, and desires. It's a normal, common thing in life. I mean, so whenever you have two people that come together and they commit together to a marriage, it doesn't mean those two people are perfect. It means they're imperfect people coming together that together they can create a perfect environment of life, love, liberty, respect, honor, and all those things that God intends for a marriage to actually demonstrate. You see, the reason God brought forth male and female in the beginning was so that the mankind or humankind can actually demonstrate the qualities that are his own. For instance, how would a person who is totally by themselves, if they were the only person in the region, how would you demonstrate love? You cannot demonstrate love by yourself unless you got a self-love of some kind. But God understood that. It's not good for the man to be alone. And he brought men and women together so that as a result of our committed relationships, we can demonstrate the attributes of God by demonstrating what love looks like, by demonstrating what care looks like, by demonstrating what compassion looks like. You see, that's the whole point of a marriage. It's not just a matter of procreation and to continue the species, which is also very important. But marriage is also designed to really be the vehicle through which God can demonstrate his attributes to his creation on earth. So when we look at this, conflicts trigger feelings and a deep personal need that is at the core of the problem. So here are the three basic areas that we need to have in order to really set the stage to resolve a conflict. Number one, each one of us needs to feel safe and secure. If you do not feel safe and secure with a person that you have a difference of opinion about, you're never going to resolve that conflict. It's just not going to happen. Everyone retreats into their own corner. They will not lock down on their own emotions and their own point of view, and they will not come forth. Remember this, and I'll say this over and over again through this series. Men are designed and wired to have significance. Women are wired to have security. So men, if you cause an environment in which create an environment in which your spouse feels safe and secure, she will give you significance. And I could say a lot more about that, but that's not really the complete focus of this teaching today. Secondly, there's a need to feel respected and valued. Each one of us has a need to be appreciated, to loved, and valued as a person, as an individual. And if that is violated in some way, we will not resolve conflicts. We will back into our corner, we'll put up our guard, and it's like the old adage that I've said many, many times, a person against A person persuaded against their will is of the same opinion still. And so if we don't feel safe where we can actually share our thoughts and share our concerns, that conflict is never going to be resolved. Number three, we also the reason we want to resolve the conflict or resolve the disagreement is so that we can have a greater closeness and a greater sense of intimacy with our partner. Very, very important for us. There's a lot more that can be said on that, but just for the sake of time and being able to go through this and get through what I need to try to get through today, I'm gonna move on. So number two, and this major principle here is conflicts arise from having different needs. Everyone needs to feel understood, nurtured, and supported, but the ways in which those needs are met is different for different people. And that's why it's important for us as husbands and wives to really learn what causes or what makes our spouse tick. What is their primary love language? The love languages are gifts, words of affirmation, works of service, quality time, and touch. And every one of us respond to those to one or more of those particular areas in different ways. And so it's important for us as a husband and wife to really find out what those love languages are, so we can work with those, and really those will also help to resolve conflicts, because we have those needs to be needed and understood. It's very important that we do that. It's also important that we acknowledge that both of us as a spouse contribute positively to a relationship. And that is so important. When we're first married, sometimes I know I was in that category where I didn't give my wife a whole lot of time to put input into questions or differences of opinion we had in our early years of our marriage. But as I learned to respect and appreciate her more as years went by, I value her input very, very much. In fact, we very seldom disagree on issues anymore. But if we do, because we value and respect each other, we'll state our opinion as to how we see it. And then what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of a time out, so to speak, and we won't discuss it it could be a few hours, it could be a few days. We'll come back together after having prayed about it, after having considered it together. And usually we can resolve it without any kind of an issue after that. But it's because there's a mutual respect for each other. And it is so vital to build and strengthen our relationship. Number three, a conflict may feel more threatening than it really is. Some people will try to avoid any kind of a confrontation at all costs. I personally have never been afraid of confrontation. The Lord showed me many, many years ago the beauty and the blessing of being able to deal with issues up front rather than sweeping them under the rug, so to speak, and rather than to just not deal with them and letting them fester and grow and whatever and destroy relationships. Because here's the bottom line. The issue, I'll not say this again, the issue is not the issue. The issue is the relationship. Which do you value more? Do you value more being right, or do you value the relationship more? Now, none of us are always right, and none of us are always wrong. And just because our perspective is different than our spouse's does not mean that either one of those is wrong. It doesn't mean that either one of them is right necessarily. That's why we need to resolve the issue. That's how we need to work together to be peacemakers, to resolve it through reconciliation. So now that we have something solid on which we can build to go forward again. That's what we're really after in this conflict. But sometimes some people will fear conflicts and avoid it at all costs. Don't be one of those people, because if you're afraid to speak and share what you see in an issue or a matter, you're going to just have continual frustration. Resentment will build up in it, and you're never really going to have something solid in your relationship. What are the things that we usually ask couples who come to us for counseling? And we've done this many, many, many countless times over the years. is we'll look at the wife and say, do you feel safe with your husband? And we'll look at the husband and we'll say, do you feel safe with your wife? And a very high percentage of those responses are no, they don't feel safe. Now, what do I mean by that? When I talk about feeling safe, I don't mean that you're afraid you're going to be going home and getting beat up. No, no. What I'm referring to is, can you share what's really in your heart without fear of reprisal, without shame, without being feel like you're just going to be put down or not heard or not understood or told to get over it or whatever? That's what I mean by not feeling safe. Because if we don't feel safe in our relationship, we're going to do everything we can to avoid conflicts. Conflicts will never serve us, but we'll always be servant to that conflict. Whoever has the loudest voice and holds the strongest position will then be the master. So you don't have a relationship that's really a marriage. You have a master-servant relationship, and that's not anywhere near to what God intended it to be. So here we go. This is number 4. Successful conflict resolution depends largely on our ability to handle emotional stress. Now, I touched on this briefly, but we really need to examine this a little further, because when a conflict is resolved in a healthy way, it increases our understanding of one another, builds trust, and strengthens our relationship. But in order for us to do that, we need to handle our emotions and be in control of our emotions, because conflicts can trigger very strong emotions that, if not kept in control, can blow up into saying things that we regret afterwards. It can actually totally destroy relationships. I know of relationships and marriages that have been destroyed through simply one disagreement. And like has often been said, one major conflict and just a total put down and disrespect can destroy years of building mutual respect and trust. Don't do that. Ask for God's grace to be able to hold your emotions in check, hold your emotions in the place where we can speak from a vantage point of having those emotions in control. Because if we aren't comfortable with our emotions or able to manage them in times of stress, we won't be able to handle or resolve conflict successfully. It's impossible. It's impossible to do. So let's move on. 3 steps of diffusing a disagreement or an argument. Number 1, place your opinion temporarily on hold. This is what I said. My wife and I have done this over the years. Many times we just say, okay, we don't see things the same way. And so we're just going to set things aside for a prescribed amount of time, pray about it, think about it, consider options, consider each other's perspective, come back together, and then we can talk about it. And usually we can resolve it. So that's number 1. Place our opinions temporarily on hold. Secondly, tell our spouse that we need to understand his or her perspective. You do this through communication. You do this through asking questions. Help me. You do this by saying, help me to understand, why you're seeing it this way. Help me to understand why do you don't see my point of view. And if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, ask me the questions, and I can try to bring that playing field to a level spot. Because, well, again, what we're after is to have a resolution to whatever the difference is, or the argument is, or the conflict is, because we're called to be peacemakers, and so we want to make peace through reconciliation. Number 3 is always look for the kernel of truth in our spouse's position. None of our perspectives is totally wrong or faulty as in the core. There's always some good in the perspective that we hold, especially if we have trust or respect for our spouse. So always when you have a difference of opinion, see what you can find in your spouse's opinion or position that you can really respect and that you can commend her or him on. Because it's really important that we build something, that we strengthen a position before we try to build upon that and to bring a resolution to whatever that difference is. Remember this. We all want to feel loved and understood and appreciated by those that we love. When understanding statements are brought into the conflict, we intensify the. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. That was not good. When understanding statements are brought into the conflict, the intensity of the argument quickly diminishes. That's what I was wanting to say. And with a decrease in emotional intensity, the stage is set for a healthier, and a more complete and effective communication. That's our goal. Now I'm going to change gears a little bit, and I'm going to move forward now, and how we can actually. I'm going to give you some principles, some guidelines on how you can actually turn conflicts into growth opportunities. And this is really what we need to do in everything we do in our marriages. We want to strengthen our relationship. We want to strengthen our marriage. We want to strengthen our influence in the community. We want to strengthen our influence in our circle of friends and all of that. But most of all, we want to strengthen our relationship and our commitment together. In order to do that, we have to be respectful. We have to be gracious to each other. We have to really make an attempt to understand each other's point of view in order for us really to come to any kind of resolution. So the principles for managing and resolving conflicts, number one, is managing and resolving conflict requires the ability to quickly reduce stress and balance emotions. I said this. You cannot resolve a conflict if you're in a stressful circumstance. If you allow your emotions to get all stressed, if you allow yourself to get all built up and anxious and frustrated, you will not resolve a conflict. You may give in to the other side of the partner, or you may just stuff it and put it under the rug and not resolve it. And this is what happens is so many times in our marriage seminars and also in our one-to-one counseling, we find issues and discouragements and disagreements and conflicts that have been festering for years and years and years and never dealt with, never resolved. That should not be. The scripture tells us not let the sun go down on our wrath. So we should learn how to resolve the conflicts that we have, because conflicts can be very draining. So it's important for us to remember and to consider whether or not the conflict is really worth our time and energy. Sometimes there are some things that just aren't worth the time and energy to debate or try to challenge or whatever. If it doesn't mean if it's not really all that significant, why does it matter if my spouse sees something different than I do? It doesn't really matter. Remember, what is more important than seeing things exactly the same way is that we have a loving relationship and we build on that relationship. And the things that really want to tear us apart are the things that we work at bringing peace through reconciliation. So be sensitive to what is felt as well as what is said. Very important. Very, very important. Sometimes we need to read between the lines, so to speak. What's being said, but what's not being said also is important. We need to learn the body language of our spouse. We need to make resolution the goal of what we're doing rather than just being right. We need to concentrate on strengthening and maintaining the relationship rather than proving that we're right. Being right is overrated. If you'd have been at Golgotha's hill a couple thousand years ago when three people were being crucified there on the hill, and if you didn't really know what was going on, if your perspective was what you saw, you'd say, well, I see they're getting rid of three malefactors or thieves or whatever today. But you'd have been so totally wrong, because what was really happening there was the greatest redemptive act in human history. You just had the wrong perspective. And so it's important that we learn to get the proper perspective in something. And sometimes the only way to do that is to draw upon and appreciate the opposite perspective and the opposite point of a disagreement than what we ourselves hold. Very, very important. So we need to do that, we need to be respectful of our spouse's viewpoint. We need to focus on the present rather than on the past. And this is what I've said. I said so many times over the years, people have a whole laundry list, so to speak, of things that has been unresolved. And as a result of that, nothing gets resolved. When you want to resolve issues in conflict, deal with one thing at a time. Get focus on that, get that taken care of, and then you can deal with other things as they come along. Another point I want to make here is don't generalize. When you're disagreeing about something, don't use destructive labels such as "you always do that" or "you never do that." "You're never around when I need you," or "why can't you ever help me?" "You'll never change." "You're just like your mom," or "you're just like your dad." Those are comments that are destructive. You cannot build with those kind of comments. You have to, as I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, work at getting the word never and always out of your conversations with your spouse. The truth of the matter is that none of us always do something. And the truth of the matter is that none of us never do something. It's always an exaggeration. And so let's learn to respect our spouse and just get away from using those kind of terms, because no one is always wrong. And so let's learn from each other. Let's draw upon the strengths that each one of us possesses. Now, number 3, use a gentle tone of voice, because sometimes we speak more gently with our friends than we do with those we love the most. Now, it's true that some of us have more of a stronger and a boisterous voice than others, and so therefore we tend to just speak more loudly by nature. I'm one of those. Because God gave me a voice to preach, I tend to speak louder than what perhaps I would need to in a lot of circumstances or situations. My wife is just the opposite. She speaks much more quietly, and sometimes she'll say to me, "Eli," says, "Man, you came across so strong. I mean, you're blowing everybody away just with your voice." I says, "Really? That was not my intention, but that's just the way that I communicated. I have learned to tone it down a lot. If you'd have known me 30, 40 years ago, I was even different then. But the Lord has been tempering me, and so thank goodness for that." But anyway, use a voice that has a tone in it of caring, of respect, of mutual consideration, rather than one that comes across saying, "I'm right and you're wrong." You see, when we elevate our voice and we get louder in our conversation, what we're actually doing is we're trying to solidify our position, and ultimately what we're doing is we're going to be looking down on the other person. That's not how you're going to resolve a conflict. Use a gentler tone of voice. As the scripture says, a soft voice breaks the bone. So you use a general tone of a calmer and gentler tone of voice. Number 4, find the positive in the moment. Instead of saying "I can't stand it," say "I think I can." Focus more on where we want to go instead of where we are. And then also, it is is our self-talk truth or exaggeration? What do I mean when I say focus on where we want to go instead of where we are? It's like the principle in Mark 11:24, where it says, when you pray, it said, "Believe that those things which you say will come to pass, and those things which you say you will have them." A little bit of a paraphrase, Eli's version. But here's the point. Rather than focusing just on where you are now, focus on where you want to be. In other words, if you have a situation where wouldn't it be great when we get this all finished and we get this thing questioned, we can be on the other side. It's a little bit like I tell people when I counsel them spiritually, I said, listen, if you've got a problem that you're praying about, don't pray the problem, pray the answer. Start thanking God for what you expect to see as when that problem has been resolved. It's much more effective prayer than saying, "Oh, God, this is such a big problem that's looming here in front of me," and saying, "God, thank you that you're the one that enables me to overcome this problem. You're the one that gives me the answers to these circumstances. You're the one that justifies me. You're the one that leads me and directs me." So when you're having a conflict or a difference of opinion like that, begin to talk about, man, it's going to be good when this is all behind us. We're such a great team. We're not going to let the enemy destroy us through a little bit difference of opinion. We're going to find the answer so we can resolve this thing and we can be stronger as a result of it. That's really what the where you want to go. Number 5, we want to value each other's perspective. You see, constructive conflict maintains a person's sense of value, and that's something you always want to be concerned about. Is that whenever you're in a difference of opinion, don't by your responses do not devalue the other person in your sight or in their own sight. Remember, every one of us has the need to be appreciated, valued, respected, honored, and loved. That's just how God made us. I've often said to couples that come to us, I said, especially if they're both believers, which mostly we have counsel over the years, we have counsel believers. But we've often said to husbands who have been really not been treating their wives very respectfully, I said, I just want to tell you, I want to give you a heads up. I want you to prepare your defense for when you stand before God and he asks you, why did you treat my daughter the way you did? I want you to start brushing up on your defense and to try to tell God why you mistreated one of his daughters. And I've told the wives the same thing. When you're unsupportive and you're just constantly nagging or whatever, prepare your defense to God, which you really won't have a defense, but prepare your defense to God as to why you disrespected or continually nagged at one of his sons. Because ultimately, our relationship with God is eternal. Our relationship with each other as spouses is temporary. So the way you deal with each other in the temporary realm, you're going to give an account for God in the eternal realm. So be respectful and honor each other. And remember this: there's men have a different way of approaching things than women do. Women fight from emotion. Very important. I'm going to deal with that more in another broadcast. Women fight from emotion. Men don't understand emotion. To men fight with logic. Here's the facts, man. Just the facts, man. Logic does not hear emotion. So we need to understand that's the difference in the way we're wired. Again, that's going to be another broadcast, and I'm going to talk about the different perspectives that men have than what women have and how we see things differently. That's a whole nother broadcast. So conflicts can become opportunities for personal growth if handled with respect and a genuine desire to maintain the relationship. That's what this is really all about. We want to maintain the relationship and cause it to be something which we can grow by and actually be strengthened in that relationship. Because ultimately, here's the issue. I'm going to say it again. I'll keep saying it right throughout this series. The issue is not the issue. The issue is the relationship. What are you doing that has eternal value with your spouse? What are you doing to strengthen her? What are you doing to strengthen him? What are you doing that's going to build something that's a legacy for your children? What are you doing that's going to strengthen their resolve to say, I want a marriage just like mom and dad had? Rather than say, man, I don't want anything to do with marriage, number one. Secondly, I certainly don't want a marriage like my parents had because it was nothing but a war zone continually. No. That's not the kind of marriage that you want to have. And that's not what you want to portray to your children. Now, I have a complete broadcast out there on the art of listening, which is really kind of a lost art. But I'm going to give you 7 quick keys to become a better listener, because in resolving any kind of a conflict, you need to really learn to listen to what the other person is saying if you're going to be able to resolve it in any way. Because if you're talking over them or you're not really hearing what's being said or you're not present in what's being said, you're never going to get that resolved. And the goal here is to be a peacemaker, so you can resolve the issues through reconciliation. So number 1, 7 quick keys. Listening is an active, not passive activity. It involves not just listening what's being said, but also what's not being said. Number 1, listening is an active and not a passive activity. Number 2, listen for unspoken fears, concerns, moods, and aspirations. What's really being said by your spouse when they're sharing their point of view, their perspective? Because remember that speaking reveals a person's deepest thoughts, ambitions, and concerns. Number 3, good listening requires patience, understanding, and wisdom. Every one of us want to be heard. We don't want to just be in love with our own voice. We want to hear what somebody else has to say. So a good listener must learn to understand human nature and emotions. Very vital and very important. Number 4, listen to others with respect and validation. Always look for something that you can validate. Look for something that you can strengthen, that you can point out that's positive. Very, very important to do that. Listen for telltale signs of impending trouble. That's number 5. People usually won't tell you directly if they're upset with you. But if somebody's giving you the silent treatment, which is another broadcast on the silent treatment and how to deal with that, but look for telltale signs and make sure everything's right. Sometimes you might just need to ask your spouse if she's going through something. You might just have to say, honey, are we all right? Is everything okay with us? Did I offend you in some way? Ask those questions. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. It's a relationship. You're a unit. You're a team. Strengthen that teamwork. Number 6, listen without thinking about how you're going to respond. Really listen to what's being said, not just listening to gain ammunition for your response. Listen to what's really being said. And number 7, listen with a positive optimism for people's strengths and abilities. Listen optimistically for what your spouse is saying. Expect to learn something from it. You see, if you see yourself as always right and your spouse is always wrong, you're not going to be open to hearing or listening or learning anything from them. All you're wanting to do is strengthen your own position. Look for the positives in the negatives that are being expressed. In every negative, there's usually a small positive as well. Look for it. Because as you learn to do some of these things, you're going to find that your conflicts or the disagreements that you have with your spouse, or even in other social circles, you can begin to disarm those and cause them really become growth opportunities. So I hope that this has been helpful for you. And again, as I said in the beginning, if you're enjoying these broadcasts, I'd love to hear from you. Just a little comment down below, or just a word of, hey, I really appreciate that. I'd just love to hear from you. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful. You have a wonderful day, and I hope you'll join me again for another broadcast as I continue with this series on Marriage Matters. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.